This happened to me in 2019, when I had just moved into my first apartment alone. It wasn't fancy, just a small one-bedroom on the edge of town surrounded by woods. The landlord told me it used to be part of an old estate before being converted into units. It was cheap, quiet, and I didn't think much about the history. That was my first mistake. The first few weeks were fine. Every night I'd get home from work, eat dinner, and sit by the living room window scrolling through my phone. The window faced the woods, and sometimes deer would come close enough that I could see their eyes glinting in the porch light. But one night around 1 a.m., I noticed something different. Through the glass, I saw what looked like a person standing between the trees. Still, barely visible. I thought maybe it was just someone walking a dog, but there was no movement, no flashlight, nothing. Just standing. After a minute, I closed the blinds and went to bed, but I couldn't shake that image. A human shape out there, completely still. The next night it happened again. Same time, same place. This time, I turned off my lights so I could see better through the glass. The figure was closer. Not by much, maybe 10 feet nearer than before, but enough that I could see the faint outline of a head. I tried to convince myself it was my imagination, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. That night, I locked every door, closed every window, and even shoved a chair under the doorknob. I barely slept. By the third night, I was getting paranoid. So I set up my phone by the window and hit record, facing the woods. I let it film overnight while I tried to sleep. When I checked the footage the next morning, my stomach turned cold. At exactly 1:17 a.m., the camera caught something moving between the trees. A tall figure stepping slowly out of the shadows. It stopped directly in front of the window and stood there for almost 5 minutes. Then, just before the video cut out, it moved closer, until its face was nearly pressed against the glass. The video ended there, but the last frame showed enough. A pale face with no eyes. Just smooth gray skin and a wide mouth stretched too far to be human. I called the police that afternoon. They searched the woods but didn't find anything. No footprints, no signs of trespassing. The officer told me it was probably a prank or maybe an animal, but it wasn't. That night, I didn't even open the blinds. I slept with all the lights on. But sometime after midnight, I woke up to a sound. Faint tapping, like fingernails on glass. My heart froze. It was coming from the living room window. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The tapping got louder, slower, like it knew I was listening. Then came something else, a voice, a whisper, broken, raspy, like someone who hadn't spoken in years. I see you. I grabbed my phone, ready to call the cops again. But when I turned on the flashlight and pointed it toward the window, there was nothing. No one outside. But on the glass, I could see handprints, dozens of them, smeared in what looked like dirt or something darker. The next morning, I packed my things and called my landlord. I told him I was leaving. He didn't sound surprised. He just sighed and said quietly, "You saw it too, didn't you?" When I asked what he meant, he said the property had a long history of visitors. People who used to live there reported seeing someone watching from the woods, always around 1-2 a.m., always getting closer. No one ever stayed longer than a month. Before hanging up, he told me one last thing. "Whatever you do," he said, "don't look back when you drive away. It follows people who look back." I didn't believe him until I left that night. I was driving down the dirt road away from the apartment when curiosity got the best of me. Just once, I looked in the rearview mirror. In the faint glow of my taillights, I saw it standing in the middle of the road. Tall, gray, motionless, and as I watched, it slowly lifted its hand and dragged one long finger across its throat. I hit the gas and didn't stop until sunrise. That was 6 years ago. I moved to a different city, changed jobs, tried to forget. But lately, every night around 1-2 a.m., I've been hearing tapping again. Soft, deliberate, like fingernails on glass. And last night, when I pulled back the curtain, there was a handprint from the outside.
I used to live alone in a small apartment complex in the outskirts of Chicago. The kind of place where everyone keeps to themselves. No one really talks to their neighbors, and you only notice someone exists when you hear their TV through the walls. I lived in apartment 405 on the 4th floor. Right across from me was 407, which had been empty for months after the last tenant moved out. I knew because the landlord, Mr. Peterson, told me he was doing some renovations inside before finding someone new. But then, about 2 weeks ago, strange things started happening. Night one. It started around 2:30 a.m. I was lying in bed when I heard the sound of footsteps coming from the hallway. Slow, dragging steps. I thought maybe it was someone coming home late, but then the footsteps stopped right outside my door. After a few seconds of silence, there was a faint knock. 3 slow knocks. I froze. I didn't move, didn't even breathe. I waited, but nothing else happened. No voice, no more knocks. Just silence. The next morning, when I looked through the peephole, there was nothing. But something about the door across from mine caught my attention. Apartment 407. The door was slightly open. Night 3. For the next 2 nights, I heard noises again. Knocking, shuffling, whispering. It sounded like someone talking quietly right outside 407. Finally, I decided to ask the landlord if someone had moved in. He said, "No one's rented 407 yet, it's still empty. Why?" When I told him what I'd been hearing, he laughed it off, saying, "These old buildings make weird noises. Don't worry about it." But that night, I couldn't sleep. Around 3 a.m., the whispers came again. Louder this time. I pressed my ear against my wall and realized something terrifying. The voice wasn't coming from the hallway. It was coming from inside apartment 407. Night 5. I decided to record it. I set up my phone near the door and hit record before I went to bed. When I checked the recording the next morning, I almost dropped my phone. About 2 hours in, I heard the door to 407 creak open. Then came slow, heavy breathing, and faint, dragging footsteps approaching my door. Then, clear as day, a voice whispered, "You're in my room." And then there was a loud bang against my door. The rest of the recording was just static. The last night. That evening, I called the landlord again. No answer. I texted him that something was seriously wrong in the building, but he never replied. At 3 a.m., I heard the sound again. Footsteps, whispering, and a door creaking. But this time, when I looked through my peephole, I saw something. The door to 407 was wide open, and standing in the doorway was a tall, thin figure. It was pale, almost gray, and its head was tilted unnaturally to the side. I blinked and it was gone. I backed away, locked my door, and grabbed my phone to call 911. But before I could, my phone screen went black. Dead battery, even though it had been at 80%. Then came the knocks again. 3 slow, heavy knocks, and a whisper from the other side of the door. "You shouldn't have seen me." The next morning, when I opened my eyes, it was morning. I was lying on the floor, my front door wide open. The police said they found me unconscious, my phone shattered beside me. They also said something else that chilled me. When they checked apartment 407, it was completely empty. Except for one thing. On the wall, written in what looked like dried blood, were 4 words. "See you next time." I moved out the same day. No one ever rented apartment 407 after that. And sometimes, when I wake up in the middle of the night, I swear I still hear those same 3 knocks.
was 23, I took a night security job at a storage facility on the edge of town. It wasn't a bad gig. Sit in a small office, monitor a few cameras, and walk around the property every couple of hours. The pay was fine, and the owner, a quiet older man named Richard, seemed nice enough. The place had over 200 units, most of them rarely used. The first few nights were boring. Just me, some instant coffee, and the sound of rain tapping the metal roof. But around my fourth night, I started to notice something strange on the security feeds. In the corner of the screen near Unit 47, I saw what looked like movement. A shadow. At first, I thought it was just the wind blowing debris, or maybe an animal. But when I zoomed in, I saw what looked like a figure standing there. Not moving, just standing in front of the unit. When I went to check, nobody was there. The padlock was sealed, and the area was empty. I brushed it off. Maybe I was just tired. But the next night, it happened again. Same unit. Around 2:14 a.m., a man-shaped shadow appeared on the screen. Only this time, when I looked closer, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The figure wasn't casting a shadow on the ground. It was just standing there, perfectly still, its head tilted slightly to one side. I grabbed my flashlight and went out to see for myself. The air outside was cold and heavy. When I reached Unit 47, the lock was missing, completely gone. The metal latch was bent, almost torn apart. I opened the door halfway and shined my light inside. It was pitch black, empty, just the smell of dust and something faintly metallic. Then I heard it, from the back corner of the unit, the sound of someone breathing. I froze. The beam of my flashlight was shaking in my hand. I called out, "Hey, you're not supposed to be here." The breathing stopped, and then, slowly, something in the dark moved. I slammed the door shut and ran back to the office. I locked myself in and watched the cameras until morning. But here's the thing. Nothing ever appeared on the footage. No movement, no figure, no sign of anyone. When Richard came in the next day, I told him what happened. He looked at me for a long time before finally saying, "Unit 47 has been empty for years. I keep it locked for a reason." He told me not to go near it again. A week later, the power went out during my shift. Total blackout. I only had the flashlight and a portable radio. The wind outside was howling so loud that I barely heard the first bang. Then another bang, 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 coming from the hallway outside the office. Steady, heavy, and slow. I stepped out and followed the sound. The deeper I went, the more I realized where it was coming from. Unit 47. The door was open halfway again. Inside, the beam of my flashlight caught something. A handprint on the wall. But not dusty or old. Fresh, pressed into the metal as if burned into it. And then, just as I turned to run, the door slammed shut behind me with a metallic clank. Pitch darkness, something whispered right next to my ear. I couldn't understand it, but I could feel the breath. It wasn't human. When I finally forced the door open and ran out, the sun was already coming up. I didn't go back inside. I called Richard, told him I quit, and left everything, my keys, my flashlight, my jacket, on the ground. 2 months later, I drove past the storage facility again. The whole property was surrounded by police tape. I stopped and asked an officer what happened. He said, "The owner. We found him this morning in one of the units. Door was sealed from the inside. When I asked which one, he looked at his notes and said, Unit 47. They said his body was found sitting in the corner, facing the wall, with a look of pure terror frozen on his face. But here's the part that still keeps me awake at night. On the inside of the door, they found fresh handprints, and one of them matched mine.